Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Marty Tate. He's a partner at Carman Lenhoff Israelsen. He's an attorney with a specialty in crowdfunding. He shares my passion for social good. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to Your Mark on the World, bringing you another changemaker with champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Marty, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin. Nice to be here.
Well, the pleasure's all mine, and I'm excited to talk to you. There's so much going on in the world of crowdfunding that we could spend all day, every day, it seems like, talking about innovations there. And so much of it is important to understand in the context of the legal context of it. One of the things that I have yet to explore with my audience is safes. And I don't really understand what a safe is, but I know that entrepreneurs have started using safes, oftentimes in association with crowdfunding campaigns. Tell us what a safe is.
Okay, so a SAFE stands for, it's just an acronym, Simple Agreement for Future Equity. And what it is it's basically a contractual right to receive that you're paying now and receiving a contractual right to receive equity in the future. So it's exactly what it says it is. And it usually is a simple agreement. It's usually just a few pages. And it's usually that future event is typically a financing. So it's usually there's a preferred financing. It's a defined term will be the event, a financing event. It's usually a preferred round. And there'll be a lot of times an amount, so a preferred round of greater than $1 million. And one of the things that people like about safes is you receive there's generally a discount. So you're receiving the right, you're buying now, and you're getting a chance to receive equity in the future at a discounted price. So it's contractual. It's not equity. It's not really debt. It's just a contractual right.
There's some interesting things here. If it's not debt and it's not equity, it's not on the balance sheet, right?
Yeah, correct. It's not going to show up on the cap table. So the entrepreneur, the companies like that, because it doesn't muddy up their cap table. Doesn't technically, because it's not really debt. It doesn't show up on a balance sheet. I know accountants have squabbled and wrestled with how to treat these safes because they are a liability of the company. But from a pure debt standpoint, you don't have to repay it. So if the company goes out of business or you never have that event, then it's not a liability. A lot of times there's a term on it so that if at the end of, if that event, that financing hasn't taken place, then there'll be a conversion later down the road. But companies like it because it's not something that like a convertible note where there would be a maturity date and they'd have to pay on it.
As this really is, makes a lot of sense for the company, the issuer. But for all the reasons we've been talking about, if it's not on the balance sheet and it's not equity yet, so you haven't given up any ownership in the company yet, it's sort of magic money. But let's talk about it from the investor standpoint. Now we're looking at a crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder or one of the other sites or Start Engine, and they're offering me a safe. What do I have if I don't have debt and I don't have equity? I have nothing, maybe. Help us think this through.
You have a contractual right, and I have to, full disclosure, I am not a fan of safes. I rarely will represent individual investors. I represent a lot of companies, and I don't like them, and I think it's for the reason you just described. I don't feel like from an investment standpoint, it's just that. What do you have? You have a contractual right. You have a right to, sue the company if something doesn't happen, but that's it's it's different than equity, it's different than ownership, or it's different than debt.
Let me give you an example here that I think helps to make the point. Let's say that someone does a crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder, raises $100,000 and buys a Tesla and goes out of business. Now, even if that Tesla isn't on the books of the company, if it was bought with that money, it would seem that the shareholders, shareholders would have a claim on it, perhaps, but certainly debt holders would have a claim on it. But a safe holder would be one step removed from either of those positions to have a claim on it in a bankruptcy situation. So it does seem like it's safe. Am I thinking about that right, or am I missing the boat? I'm not an attorney.
You are. No, you are thinking about that right, and that's the exact reason why I don't love them. I think it makes a lot more sense if the company's reluctant to do equity right now, or they want to incentivize people to invest now. They could do a convertible debt with a discount rate. That's convertible notes are instruments we've been using forever, and hundreds of millions, billions of dollars have probably been raised on convertible debt. That's an instrument that makes sense for that very reason. Like you said, if the company commits fraud and goes out and misappropriates funds, then you would have, as a debt holder, you would be able to try to, especially in a bankruptcy, you could go and claim those assets. And a safe holder, it's not quite sure where they sit in that in line. I mean, if it is regarded as debt, it's definitely unsecured, so you're going to sit behind the secured debt holders. Does it come before equity? I don't know. So that's the big issue. And courts are grappling with this as well and trying to figure these things out and where to place them.
So let's talk about how the terms of a traditional convertible note, and I say traditional convertible note, in the entrepreneurial world, in the startup world, a convertible note looks and sounds a lot different than what trades on Wall Street. It sometimes trades under the same name, right? They're convertible notes traded on Wall Street. They're not the same terms. They're not the same deal, but maybe the same concept, right? It's debt that converts into equity. But let's compare the startup world convertible note to a safe. Can you think through kind of provision by provision? So the money comes in. What does the instrument look like? How does it differ?
So on a convertible note, you'll have, on deals that I'll typically do is, it depends on if it's just to one investor or the company's trying to raise, money from a lot of different investors. So you might have a note purchase agreement, and that's going to give you certain rights and require the company to make certain reps and warranties as well as the investor. And then you'll have the note itself, the instrument itself, which may or may not be secured. If it's secured, that's even better because you've got assets of the company that are the collateral for that note. Most of the time, they're not. And then you'll have the conversion feature, which basically sometimes it's at the company's option, which is rare, but I've seen that where the company says, hey, we can convert you at any time. It's usually at the holder's option. And so there might be a period where the holder can convert it. There might also be a automatic conversion, which is typically in connection with a financing, similar to a safe, where in the event of a financing, and sometimes there's a minimum amount, so it's not triggered on a smaller round, that it will convert. A lot of times there's a discount, again, similar to a safe where it could convert at a discount. But in that case, it's still debt. So even if it doesn't convert, you still have this debt. The difference between that and a safe is you don't have, you're not a debt holder. It has some of the same provisions, but a lot of times the agreements are skinnier. And again, it's just not a debt instrument. It's a contractual right.
So in the event of there is no financing, let's say, because most companies don't get venture capital, they don't get much angel capital. So, a crowdfunding round happens, and whether it's $50,000, $150,000, $1 million, chances are really good, if we're being honest, that there will never be more money invested in that business. Now,
Yeah.
it's likely to go out of business if there isn't, but there is a scenario where the company doesn't go out of business and doesn't raise more money, that it continues to thrive. Now, sometimes, venture capitalists refer to those as zombies. Most people refer to them as businesses. What happens to a safe holder and to the debt holder in those two scenarios? How does it differ?
So if you're saying if the company goes out of business, or the company just kind of keeps plugging along?
Yeah, they stay in business, but they don't raise more money. So they're obviously not very successful, or they are so successful they didn't need money. But there's no trigger, right? So there's no automatic trigger happening. What happens to the investors in those two scenarios?
So in the case of a convertible note, the note holder, if there isn't a trigger, a lot of times there's still the maturity date. So the note might have a term of 18 months or 2 years or 12 months or whatever it might be. So the end of that time, the company is then obligated to return the money that they borrowed from the investor. Now, again, if they can't, then that would trigger default provisions. There's obviously, then they would be able to sue and try to collect the money that they're owed plus interest. That's another piece about the note is, most notes will have an interest. A lot of times it's nominal, but notes will have an interest. So you're as a note holder, your money is gaining interest, which is a benefit. So before I go off the rails here a little bit, in a safe situation, if that no event ever happens, there are provisions. Some safes will have a provision where it will automatically convert at a certain period of time at a set rate. So if after 2 years there hasn't been an event, it will convert to equity. But some don't. I've seen safes where it's just basically it's a really good deal if it does convert, but if it doesn't, you're kind of left holding that, for the long term. So
interesting. Again, that seems to argue for looking for the more traditional convertible note rather than the safe again, right?
Yeah, and like I said, from an investor standpoint, that's a preferred instrument, I think. But and going back to something you said earlier, you're talking about a lot of the crowdfunding sites really are big on the safes. And I had a client that they were going out with a crowdfunding raise. They were working with a particular platform, and the platform really was pushing a safe. They said this is, it's just what we're used to. It's kind of generally accepted, and it really has, for all of the bashing I've done on it, it's gained quite a bit of acceptance in the startup community. But anyway, they ultimately were able to switch platforms, but it's definitely it's an instrument that people like and have gotten comfortable with. So
I guess the part of the appeal, obviously we've talked about some really key appeals to the issuer. One being that it's equity-like on the balance sheet, certainly not, or apparently not debt, and but it doesn't have any of the real rights of equity. So it's sort of a magic source of money. But also I would imagine that the legal costs for drawing that up are very low. And in fact, I suspect there are people out there using templates and no lawyers to come up with that. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a document that I think you can download off of, several different websites. It's called a crowd safe, and it's a crowdfunding safe that is pretty generally accepted by a lot of the platforms. And so, yeah, you're right. It's pretty low cost or barrier to entry. This is
really a terrible thing to do, but are there comparable templates, or are there low-cost ways to set up a convertible note?
Yeah. I think a lot of those same, startup websites will have a template note as well. I think the safe takes a little less thought to it. It's basically, this is what it is. You have to, fill in a couple numbers, whereas a note, you have to maybe think about 2 or 3 more things. So I don't know. I don't know the reason behind it. I know that we don't want to go down this path today, but there's even something that I've been working on a lot lately was in relation with cryptocurrencies. You have what's called a SAFT, which is a simple agreement for future tokens, which is similar. It's just basically, rather than getting equity, you're getting tokens if they're ever issued down the road. So yeah. We can talk about that later.
We do need to have you back on the show in the future to talk a little bit about the whole ICO thing, and another topic for another day would be to talk about the legal implications of selling a future royalty stream, which is another way for early stage startups to finance their businesses that may also have some of the legal simplicity that early stage companies are looking for, so they don't spend more on legal than they're raising.
Yeah,
right? If you're going to raise $25, $50, $100,000, you don't want to spend $25, $50, $100,000 on legal. So, So, Marty, just a couple of quick questions here for you. You're an expert in the crowdfunding space. I see you're traveling around the country giving advice and such, and that's great. So you're admired, you're revered. Who do you look up to and revere as a role model?
In the legal space, I don't know if there's one person that within the crowdfunding space. There's a pretty tight-knit community, and I'm sure you know a lot of the people, and there's some people that I've had the chance to work with or speak on panels with that I really look up to. There's a gentleman, and perhaps he's even been on your show, Doug Lenhoff.
He's been on the show a number of times.
Yeah. So Doug's one of the people I look up to. Doug's great. He's been out to Salt Lake City. He's always good at referring business my way, and he's great to pick up the phone and answer questions when I have them. So he's somebody that in this space he's one of the pioneers, and like I said, I've been felt very fortunate to share the stage with him a number of times and get to know him. So.
Great guy. So, Marty, you practice a brand of law that tends to be a little more supportive of the community, high ethics. You spend a lot of time trying to support entrepreneurs. That isn't necessarily the highest income making strategy for a lawyer. What's drawn you to this particular approach for the practice of law? I think a lot of things. I look back over my career and there's a number of factors along the way that have kind of brought me to where I am. There was a period of time, I started off at big firms. I had a very short period of time where I was with an incubator and said, I'm kind of done practicing law. I want to take this passion for startups and help them. And then I had the good fortune to be with some private equity and venture capital groups that invested in startups. It's just something that I've enjoyed. I got into
sort of the crowdfunding space, pre-Jobs Act, had some clients that were interested in trying to figure out how to basically use the internet to raise money. And that got me involved. That's actually how I met Doug and some of the other people. There's a whole list of characters that we all know from the early days that I was able to associate with. And one of the things that I enjoy about this space is, for me, I love it when I get a call from an entrepreneur that says, we're a startup, this is what we're trying to do. And I feel very fortunate. I'm with a small firm. I'm in a smaller market. And so I can be pretty flexible with the type of clients that I have. Although I'm in Utah, 90% of my clients are outside of the state. And I think that's because, I can give a great value compared to a New York firm or a Silicon Valley firm, and be flexible and say, yeah, we're willing to work with that. We're willing to take some equity. We're willing to do some different things. So I think that's a way that, that we can give back and help in this area.
Fantastic. Well, Marty, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I want to ask you one last question, though. What is your superpower?
What is my superpower? That is a really, really good question. I've got, I think the only superpower I have is I can make my kids laugh at any time. So I don't know if that's a superpower or a crutch, but
that's a very good superpower. Well, Marty, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. Before you go, tell people how they can connect with you personally and learn more about your practice.
Yeah, so I am, my email is mtate@clilaw.com. I'm also on Twitter at CLI Marty, I think that's it. Or I'm on LinkedIn, Marty Tate. And my phone number is 801-534-4435. Our website is clilaw.com.
Fantastic. Well, Marty, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We wish you every success in your practice and look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks so much, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was recorded via Google Hangouts on Air and is available at youtube.com/Devin Thorpe. Subscribe to this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes by searching for Your Mark on the World. Every weekday, Devin hosts a CEO, celebrity, entrepreneur, or other changemaker here on the Your Mark on the World show to inspire and prepare you to make your mark. Devin is a champion of social good, writing about, advocating for, and advising people who are doing good. He is a Forbes contributor who is a recognized thought leader in social entrepreneurship, impact investing, and crowdfunding. To book Devin as a speaker, visit devinthorpe.com. Learn more about Devin's work at yourmarkontheworld.com.